Mr. Speaker.
Lady 32.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak in support of the bill, I think the debate that we've been having on this bill thus far has gotten a little bit off track, and the reason why I support House Bill 117 is because it is a strong policy telling our agencies what they shall or shall not do in regards to the federal health care law. And I'm not going to refer to the law to the common language that some do, because I do not wish to give my opponent any undue name recognition, and I would respectfully request that my colleagues do the same. But what House Bill 117 does, if you read on page 4, starting on line 1, the bill says that no department shall promulgate any rule, policy, guideline, or plan to implement the PPACA. It also says no department shall enter into any agreement to implement the PPACA, which is the acronym for the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act. No department shall provide assistance or resources of any kind to any agency related to any attempted implementation or enforcement of the PPACA, and no department shall accept or expend monies related to the implementation of the PPACA. We could debate all day long about whether or not the federal health care law is constitutional or not. That matter will be resolved in our court. There's no question about that. But there is no doubt that the states, there is nothing in the federal law that requires the states to assist the government in implementing this law. And that's what this bill does. It sends clear direction to our agencies that we do not want as a state to assist the federal government in implementing this law, especially in light that we're tied up in a federal lawsuit on this law. And I have passed around an explanation to you on this principle of how the federal government cannot force a state to assist in the implementation of any of their federal laws. And this was written to me by a senior research fellow at the Center for Health Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. This is what I think is really critical that we're attempting to do in this bill, is that we're directing our agencies not to assist in the implementation of this law. Even if the courts decide that this law is constitutional, we still, as a state, are not required to assist in the implementation of that. And it's critical that we consider this, because we can do a lot of the things that are being proposed in the federal legislation. We can go out as a state, we can set up a health insurance exchange, we could expand our Medicaid programs, we could do a lot of the management in health care that the federal law requires. But if we choose to do that as a state, we're going to choose to do it the way we see fit as for our state, in the state of Idaho. And I was troubled when I heard that our Department of Insurance had applied for and accepted a $1 million grant to help implement these health insurance exchanges, at the same time that our state was involved in a lawsuit on this federal legislation. If we think that the health exchange is a good thing to do, we can do that. And just like the state of Utah has already done a lot to set up these exchanges. But what's critical is that we don't accept that federal money to set those exchanges up, because then it's when the federal government comes in and tells us how we're going to set these exchanges up. And what is so critical about this, and the good lady from District 18 mentioned this in her debate, about taking this money to set up the health exchanges. When these health exchanges are set up, this will be the gate into our Medicaid programs. And the federal government, if we take the money and we set it up the way they tell us to, they will tell us through these exchanges, the states, there will be a determination of who might be able to receive a federal subsidy for these health insurance programs. If we set it up the way the federal government wants us to, they're going to be the gatekeeper. They're going to be the ones to determine whether these people will receive this federal subsidy or whether this person will be thrown into our Medicaid program where we accept the responsibility and the obligation of that. So that's why I think it's really critical. We try to focus back on what the legislation is intending to do, and that is to just direct our agencies during this time when we're engaged in a lawsuit on this law, that our agencies shall not assist in any way to help implement this law. There are things that are being the opportunities that are on the timeline, even for this year, that states have a choice, again, of whether or not they want to expand their Medicaid programs. And again, it's an option. We're not being required to do this, so it's critical that if we think it's right for our state, we do it for that reason, and not because we've got the carrot that's dangling in our face that we're going to get the additional match rate or that the federal government's going to pick up this cost. Because in 2014, when the expansion of the Medicaid really does kick in to the whole population, that's the time, that's the point in time that we might have to seriously consider some of the decisions that we make for our state on what we choose to do with our Medicaid program. We refer to this federal match rate as, well, we just have to make a decision that our U.S. currency, it's not so easy to accept that federal match rate anymore because our own U.S. currency is quickly turning into a junk bond currency. Just saw the other day, France is considering not recognizing our U.S. dollar as a recognized currency, and also saw a report from the agency that ranks our currency for bond rating because our debt to GDP ratio is increasing so much. So yeah, there will be a time where we might have to make those decisions, but we're not there yet. This is what we're focusing on right now with House Bill 117, is just a clear policy to our agencies, telling them that it's not our intent or desire to help implement the federal law in any way. And I would ask for your support of the legislation.